Twitter Shout app. We're going to create a landscape-oriented application that allows the user to enter a string up to 128 characters and have it converted to all uppercase, the idea of shouting in an email or text. So here we're going to use some string functions such as uppercase. We're going to use a conditional to make sure we don't exceed the 128 characters. And we'll look at how to create an app that is limited to landscape. So again, this is a test of creating an interface. So we're going to have a text field, some labels, a button designed for landscape, and then we'll code our project to limit it to 128 characters. Now, I gave you a little help here. We're also going to have a clear button, so we can clear the text, but also set the character count to 0. And here's our big help. A previous developer was working on this and came up with a function to limit the text to 128 characters. You simply need to call the function. So you'll have to add this function in and then call it from your IB action. So try this on your own. And if you struggle, come back and watch the rest of this video where I'll show you my solution. I'm in Xcode. I'm going to show you my solution to the Twitter Shout problem that I've already developed. However, I do want to show you a couple things here. If you want to make your project only landscape orientation, I'm in the top level of my project, and I can uncheck the portrait and upside down for both iPhone and iPad. If I want to limit this to an iPhone or an iPad, I can come up here, so I could take the iPad and I could eliminate that, and now it'll only run on an iPhone. When you submit your project to the App Store, it will determine what devices your app is available for. I'm going to jump over to the main storyboard. Here's my interface. I have several labels. I have a button, and I set an action to that button. We'll look at in code. That's just going to clear our input field here, which is the yellow text field, and clear our cyan colored label for the output, and also set the character count. Here, let me just stretch this out a little bit. Set the character count down to 0. The yellow box here is a UI text field. We're going to create both an outlet and an action for it. We'll refer to it in code, so I need an outlet, but the action is going to be happening with this text field as we enter the text, and it'll be editing changed is the event. Label here shows how many characters there are, and then this is also a label for our output. Let's take a look at the code. So I created the outlets for our input field, that's the yellow box. Our char count label, character count 0 of 128, that's our char count. That's a label. And then our shout output label is also a label, that's the blue area. Let's look at the clear button action first. So I control dragged to create this IB action func clear button. Again, my type is UI button. I'm going to set the input field to nothing, just a null string. That's the yellow input text. I'm going to set the char count text to character count colon 0 of 128. And I'm going to set the output label also to be null. Here's that function I wrote for you called limit to 128 that will limit your input to 128 characters and return the limit body as a string of 128 characters. We haven't looked a whole lot at the start index of strings and offset, so I wanted to give you a heads up on that just to make it a little bit easier for you. And we'll look at that in the future. Here then is our code for our input text field. We created an action for the yellow text field. No sender is UI text field. So I'm going to create a string variable called message. I'm going to unwrap the text property of our input text field. If the length of that string is greater than 128 or equal to 128, then we're going to change message to a limit of 128 characters by calling our limit to 128 method. Now I probably could have said greater than 128. We don't need to call if it's 128 characters, but that's okay. And then we're going to put that message value into input field text. That's our yellow input text field. Again, we created input field as a both an outlet and an action. So they're referring to the same thing. Input text field and input field are the same thing. One's an outlet, one's an action. Then we take message shout as a constant and have it equal message.uppercase. That's where we're going to get the all uppercase output for our cyan colored label. We'll set that label text to message shout, and then I need to update the character count. So character count.text is going to equal a little string of character count, and we'll interpolate the value of count and then the little string of 128. That is my solution to the Twitter shout problem. Let's just take a look at the application running in our emulator. So we can enter our text. And as I enter, you'll see the uppercase value reflected of the input text, and the character count is updating. At this point, I've reached the 128 limit. If I try to add a period or something after this, it won't let me do that. I can't type in anything after I've reached that 128 limit. And if I backspace, we'll see that amount go down. So I can say favorite community college and university. And again, I reached the limit there. I can't put a period. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS app development cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.